I've known you for years, and we've had a lot of really interesting conversations, and you have definitely a variety of perspectives on many subjects. So bringing this show and bring your show here, what do you identify with other people that have done some great shows, but also what are you going to feel you'll bring that might be different or unique?
Seen a lot of shows doing this podcast thing, and interesting. The Joe Rogan show, obviously amazing how he sits there and really works with his guests and communicates with them directly. I love his style, and I've listened to Howard Stern since the beginning, and Mark Maron, love his show. So just watching all these different formats, and then you had posed the idea of, well, why don't you hop in and give it a shot? And I thought, really? It's not really my thing. But you said, no, you think you've got an interesting take on things. I like the way you think. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. So, yeah, that's why I'm here today, just to see what we can get going.
Well, you've had quite a journey, obviously. You're not young, you're not old. Mm-mm. You're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But
midlife.
Yeah, and you've walked a lot of path here, and the audience doesn't know all that I know, and we can't cover it in this short little interview on your show. Mm-hmm. But if you were to say, describing your show, how would you say your show is going to unfold?
Interested in people, communicating, relatability, just being able to relate with somebody on different things. Fascinated with the cultures that I've seen here and abroad, and just want to experiment and get a little closer, a little more in depth as to what's really going on inside of me, the feelings I'm having, things that I'm witnessing that's taking place. Very fascinating time. Very fascinating.
Well, Halfcast, the name of the show, Halfcast. Where does that come from, and why Halfcast?
Just how my mind works, I guess, from years of dry humor. I born and raised in England, biracial, so Halfcast. It's a podcast. I'm half black, half white, half cast. It just made sense to me, so there it is. I said, let's just call it Halfcast. I had other names, but they wouldn't have been quite as subtle. So, I oftentimes when I see someone that's half black, half white, I think about relatability. Obviously, maybe for both sides. You're in Portland, and obviously there's no secret with the Black Lives Matter and all these things that go on here in Portland and have been noted nationally and all this. You've been in Portland now just a bit, and you've have some good friends in Portland, and you're living here now. What kind of perspective, what were you thinking when you see all this as a multicolored fella? Yeah, I've made some observations, and I've talked about them with people, and some people get the wrong impression. So you got to be very careful these days as to how you express what you're thinking and feeling. Excuse me. Jeff, our mutual friend of ours, he kind of explained the Portland vibe, the Portland way, and his approach to it was, oh no, Black Lives Matter, as a convenient alibi and diversion. Don't wreck my home type thing. He was coming from there, and I thought that's a little interesting of a take. But it's strange for me to walk down any neighborhood and see all these BLM signs, Black Lives Matter signs, and we do love here and transgender and everything, and it's all cool. My generation, our generation, didn't have that, so it's interesting now to see people socially conscious, if you will.
Do you feel the minority feeling being biracial? Do you feel a minority feeling of any kind here in Portland on yourself personally?
Not really. It's interesting to watch. Personally, I I've gone my whole life without this support. So all of a sudden, certain demographics of people are all of a sudden care and are interested in. For me, it's a little late because I've already experienced my life and gone through that and found that it has nothing to do with my race or my gender or my political and religious affiliations. I appreciate what's going on, but it really doesn't play into my life in any way. If anything, it makes me a little more uncomfortable being of color, because now I've got all these people concerned for my life that weren't concerned the first 40-something years when I came online and was conscious. Now all of a sudden everybody cares. It's like, well, okay, when I was getting the crap beat out of me, from the age of 9 to 14 by 5, 6, 7, 8 guys at a time, because in England we do the same thing you guys do here. We attack in packs. It's hard in a crowd is what we call it. You're tough guys in a crowd, which is probably why to this day this word they use now, triggered. If I see somebody of my size picking on a smaller dude, it's probably going to make me react. Triggered by bullies. If I see a Proud Boy walking around with an AR-15 trying to intimidate people, I'm probably going to have a problem with that. I'd like to talk to them. I'd like to have one on the show and just get somebody of intelligence, not just somebody screaming Trump rhetoric. I'd like to understand. We all know why a man needs a weapon to feel empowered, so we don't need to get into that part. But beyond that, not that I'm a psychologist or a counselor or anything, but I'd really like to talk with a Boogaloo or a Proud Boy or a BLM or, I'd really like to when I first came here, I was excited as a producer, musician, whatever. I said, if this much angst, this much protest, kids being this involved and out in the streets dancing in the tear gas and, rubber bullets, it's going to be some really good artists like back in the day with Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden and everything. They're not Soundgarden, yeah. So there's going to be some really good, crops of artists popping up in this city, and I'm hopeful that that's still true. You got that much angst and that much, to say. Hopefully it will come through in your music. So far, I've not really met anybody, but that'd be another thing. I'd love artists on the show, not just music, but
a variety show.
Yeah, just people that have something to say that have deep, feeling.
Born in England, raised in England, coming to the States, that obviously adds a lot to your story. Coming from having two different countries to pull from, being
3, but yeah,
3. Okay.
Yeah, seen a lot of things. Yeah. And I when I was 17, I knew in my heart that I wanted to be connected to the generations ahead of me. I didn't think that there was a need for me to be in my own generation. I never felt that since I can remember, since 15, 16, 17. I always hung out with 60, 70, 80-year-old men and women.
The wise men.
I just related to them. When I came to this country, I was 16, and they put me in high school. And in England, we graduate at 15 to go on to college. So I'd already graduated what we call a high school there. And I was already having an apartment and working a job and going to tech school at 16, because you're a man, supposedly, at 16. You can get your own apartment, you ride your little motorcycle, tough guys with leather jackets and airwear, airwear boots. And that's how we were. So when my father said, we're going to America, because he's American, and now I am too, but do you want to come? I'm like, yeah. Because there was nothing in the countryside of Cambridgeshire for me. So
even at that age,
there's nothing there for me.
Did you understand the opportunity of America at that age?
Because I'd come over for a little short stay prior when I was 6 through 9.
Okay.
And I saw some amazing stuff. So I definitely was. So I came over, and I had to go to high school for a year, and then I tried your college, and that didn't really work out so hot. because everything I was learning in high school I'd learned at 13 and 14, and everything in college I'd learned at 15 and 16 when I graduated. So I'm like, why am I doing?
Sounds like a better educational system over there in England.
It just was hard.
Yeah,
I was bored. I was like, I don't want to do this. There's other things to do.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which may have been a mistake. So anyway, so I come over here, and the racism thing, I've seen it in England. I've seen it in France. I've seen it in Mexico. I lived in Mexico for a little while. I've seen it here. That's another story. But my dad was on the run from the law. But yeah, I really loved the sexism, racism, religiosism. All the isms were just cool as hell. I just loved that people had these internal things going on, and the only way they could express them was to make it about you or the other person, your race, the way you look, the way you talk, where you're from. Are you a Hoosier fan or are you a Notre Dame fan? It has to be something to keep us at odds.
Right.
Fascinated with the one percenters and the people that really govern and rule this country, and how they use the low-income, blue-collar workers to scare the shit out of the middle class, to keep everybody divided, so we can keep everything rolling. And why reinvent the wheel, So, and fascinated that there are people out there that are subject to conspiracies and things that aren't real, but they'll believe it. And then you get a temperature reading on a country and go, whoa, there really are beautiful souls out there who are easily misguided and are impressionable and easily influenced.
I find that fascinating as well. I mean, I obviously I get a chance to meet some of the brightest people, and then sometimes I'm wondering, how do you believe that way?
And that's another thing. I used to believe if you went to college and got your education, that you were smart. And Eckhart Tolle talks about intelligence in the service of stupidity. And so I started dating doctors and lawyers and counselors and PhD doctors and mathematicians, laureates and all this stuff from Harvard. I've dated women looking for this intelligence, and then you date them and realize they're just human beings. The education didn't really make a difference. They do what they do. So that was fascinating, because I always thought if you were a movie star, or if you got the record deal that I never did, then you were somehow smarter or more talented than me. I didn't realize that there was a lot of other nuances to the game that have nothing to do with your talent or to do with your intelligence.
You'll be exploring a lot of people's journey. And
it's a wonderful,
whether it be your journey, you're going to be tying into a lot of people you interview, their journey, and what they're going to be, even whether they contribute or not contribute, whether they're controversial. You're going to have a slew of interviews that's going to be.
My hope is the difference here with Halfcast is I've seen the best of the best interviews. King, Larry King, and I love it. Barbara Walters, love it, and wonderful getting people to open up. I want to go somewhere else other than this. Oh, your child, like what we're doing. I want to go somewhere else. I want actual human emotion. I want to have us both get into it for real. And it's very difficult to do in front of a microphone.
Cry, laugh, get angry.
It's very difficult to do on camera, in a microphone. Yeah. From years of singing songs and having the headphones on, and you're trying to create passion in a studio. It just doesn't work. The only time it's really good is when you can stop thinking and lose your mind and not be conscious of the camera and the angle of your face and makeup, and you're not talking about where you've been and where you've come from. And I've got an education. I've traveled the world. None of that stuff. I don't give a rat's ass about that stuff. I want to know what makes your life worth living.
Sounds good. I'm excited.